organized is like one of the biggest things with this job too. I mean, we have so much going on. It can be overwhelming at times, and you definitely don't want to lose things or forget things in the process. So I have like 3 different sets of to-do lists and but yeah, just staying organized so then I do have that time where I can be creative when I want to be.
Well, this is season 4, episode 25 of the Missional Marketing Podcast. My name is Bart Blair, and it is my privilege to welcome you to the 149th episode of our show. Can't believe we've almost made it to 150. Next week is going to be 150. Make sure you tune in to next week's episode. It's going to be awesome. Actually, the 149th episode, the one that you're tuning into today, is also pretty good, if I may say so myself. Today, we've got a guest that I'm going to introduce to you in just a moment. But as always, I want to remind you that the reason we produce this podcast, and have been doing so since 2020, is to help churches grow by leveraging digital marketing and effective communications. Our focus here is really to help you as a church leader or a church volunteer figure out how you can be most effective at using digital marketing and communications tools to reach more people in your community, to disciple people better in your church, to increase engagement so that your church is just healthier and stronger and more vibrant. And we hope that the things that we're doing here, the things that we're sharing, the leaders that we're introducing you to are helping you to do that. I do want to mention that if you happen to be new to the show and you haven't ever subscribed wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, make sure that you do that. And as always, I like to mention that if you'll leave us a rating or a review wherever you listen to the show, it helps feed the algorithmic machine and more people will find our podcast. So if you do that, that would be great. We'd love to have some feedback from you to know how our podcast is affecting you and your communications and marketing efforts at your church. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, make sure that you subscribe, ring the bell, and you can also leave us a comment on the YouTube channel. We'll engage with you there. I love when I get comments on the YouTube channel, and I personally will be the one that responds to those. So love to engage with you if you would have the desire to do that. Well, today's episode is an interview with a relatively new and young communications director named Greta Rowell. She serves at a fantastic church, super fast-growing church called 3 Circles Church in Alabama. And Greta stepped into her role recently, just within the last few years, took over from another person who was in a part-time role and has really built a communications department for a 5-campus, multi-site church that's just growing leaps and bounds. Fantastic things that the Lord is doing there. And wherever you are in your journey as a church, whether you're a single church with 65 members on Sunday morning, or you're a 6, 10, or 12 campus church with tens of thousands of attendees on the weekend, there's something for you in this podcast episode. Greta's going to talk about some of the things that they're doing to outsource some of the stuff that they do to be more effective. She's going to talk about the way that her leadership team is structured and how she's working with others to really hold to the church brand and the language and the things that they want to do as a church. And at the very end of the podcast, she shares with us some insights that she has with some AI tools that she's been using and how she's learning that. I know that you're all interested in this. And Jason Hamrock and I, as I'm recording this, we're just at a church communications roadshow in Frisco, Texas, which is near where I live, at my former home church, Preston Trail Community Church. We had about 45 people in the room who were communications directors or had a hand in communications in their churches. And one of the biggest points of interest was certainly AI and the things that people want to learn about how to best utilize AI to be more effective at what they're doing. Which reminds me to remind you that if you haven't ever checked out our other podcast, it's called AI for Churches. I am the Duncy co-host to Dr. David Thorne, who is really the brains behind all of the research and development and our AI-related stuff at Missional Marketing. You can just check that out. We'll put that in the show notes here. But if you want to go to our website, it's ai.missionalmarketing.com. We have a website set up there with all kinds of AI resources, things that you can learn. And we would love to engage with you on that platform as well. That podcast is growing. It's relatively new. We produce 2 podcasts per month, about every 2 weeks. So go and subscribe to that so that you can listen. And I just mentioned Church Communications Roadshow. We had an episode just a few weeks ago with Katie Allred and Jason Hamrock, and they were sharing about how our partnership with the Church Communications Group has led us to doing some live in-person one-day events around the country. As this podcast episode is being released, the next 2 are happening in April, and they are happening in Texas, my home state, one in Houston and one in Austin. So if you happen to be listening from the Houston or Austin area, Go over to the Church Communications Group website. We'll also link to that in the show notes here. Check out the road shows and register when the registration is available. I'm pretty sure the one for Houston is already ready. The one for Austin is not quite ready, but it should be soon. And I will be there live and in person, as will Jason Hamrock, and we would love to meet you in person. It's a great opportunity for you to sharpen your skills as a communications director. Okay, this has been a very, very long intro to a very great interview. So let's get on with the interview. Thanks again for tuning in to the Missional Marketing Podcast. Here's my co-host, Jason Hamrock, the CEO of Missional Marketing, and the communications director at Three Circles Church, Greta Rowell.
Well, hey, Greta, welcome to the show. I am so glad to have you on. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. So I'm excited about our conversation today. And for everyone who's listening, Greta is from Three Circle Church. And she's going to speak into a little bit about Three Circle Church and this movement that's going on there and how fast they're growing because God's moving inside this church mightily. So that's going to be fun to hear about that. It's going to be fun to hear about Greta's story. But Greta, just take a minute and kind of explain to our audience like who you are and, you know, where you came from and just a little bit about you.
Yeah. So I'm Greta. I'm 24 years old. I'm originally from a small town outside of Atlanta, Georgia. And I moved to South Alabama to be the communications director for Three Circle, which is a multi-campus church down here on the coast. We have 5 campuses, and yeah, like you said, we are growing rapidly. I think we were recently named one of the top 100 growing churches in America, and I think top 3 in Alabama. So it's crazy what God's doing down here.
That is, how fun is that to be part of that? It's just, you know, who wants to be a part of a church that's stagnant or going the wrong way? You're part of the church that's going the right way, up and to the right, and more people are coming to know Jesus. And how fun is that?
Yes, it is awesome.
Yeah.
Greta, before you moved to Alabama, to Three Circle, were you part of a large church before that, or is this context new for you?
I was part of I would say about a mid-sized church. Yeah, it was definitely smaller in a smaller town in Georgia. I was involved in the student ministry at the time. And yeah, I was an intern there for several years, and that's kind of how I got plugged into the church side of communications.
Is that why you got your degree in mass communications then and marketing?
No, actually, I think it's a funny story. Let's see, within like 2 years of going through like core classes and everything, I had flip-flopped between majors and just could not decide what I wanted to do. So one day I was sitting at my little on-campus job and I was like, I don't know what to do. I have to declare a major soon. And so I hopped on Google and I searched personality tests that will decide like what I should do for the rest of my life. And so then I found like a random test. I don't even know what it was. But I took the little quiz and it told me that communications and marketing, I was best suited for that. So I was like, okay, sounds good.
All right, let's do
Wow.
it. So
I can only imagine what other kinds of things could have come up and what route you would have taken. And I'm not even going to go down that road because I'm sure there could have been some very interesting occupational options there. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, it was a God thing, I guess. I mean, I fully was trusting him. I was like, this sounds good. I guess this is what God has for me.
Well, I've always said, and my team hears me say this all the time, is that, you know, God's gifted you, right? You said yes to Jesus. He came inside you, his spirit's in you, and he's gifted you. And so whatever that is that you're doing in life, if you're getting joy out of it, that's like the sweet spot, you know, and sounds like you're kind of getting a lot of joy out of your job of what you get to do.
Oh, yes. I love my job. People ask me all the time, like, do you regret moving away from home? And I'm like, absolutely not. This is the best decision ever.
Yeah, you can see that.
Can we talk a little bit more about Three Circle and just give us some context of what is Three Circle like? How is it differentiated from other churches that you've experienced maybe? And kind of generally what's the ethos and the feel and the vibe of the church?
Yeah. So we have 5 campuses and each one is a little bit different, which going back to me being from a small town in Georgia, and the church that I grew up in. I didn't even know what a multi-campus church was before Three Circle. I didn't know that was a thing. But each campus is a little bit different. We have campuses in Fairhope, Daphne, Robertsdale, Thomasville, and Midtown. So all semi close together. Thomasville's the one that's a little bit farther away. It's about 2 hours from our Fairhope campus. But each one looks a little bit different. Fairhope is a little bit, I don't know how to describe it other than it's a more richer part of town. I don't know how to say that.
Yeah.
But and then we have our Daphne campus, and I would say that mostly young families go there. Robertsdale is a little bit more rural, as well as Thomasville, but they are not on the coast. And then Midtown is in Mobile, so which that campus is a probably one of our most diverse campuses. With in the center of, I think, I don't even remember what square mileage it is, but it's the most multi-ethnic, multi-class, and multi-generational area, even like within Alabama, and our church is right in the middle of it.
And reflects it. Yeah.
How have you balanced, communications within each of those different campuses, which is a different audience, right? So some are more affluent than others, and maybe just a lot of diversity going on with the different campuses. How do you message for each one of those? How did you figure that out?
So it's still an ongoing thing that I'm learning. But yes, just recognizing that each campus has a different context, different audience. That's just something to keep in mind every time we're doing any kind of social media campaign, or our weekly emails that we send out, our videos, just keeping that context just in the forefront of our minds. Just thinking about who we're targeting, who we're talking to. That would be the most important thing.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question to that? Sure. Are your campuses video venues? So do you broadcast to all the other campuses, or is there live preaching at each location?
So for our Fairhope and Daphne locations, our lead pastor usually commutes back and forth on a Sunday. So we have our gathering times staggered. So we have live in-person teaching from our lead pastor at those campuses. Robertsdale is a video venue, no live teaching. And then Midtown and Thomasville are primarily live teaching by those campus pastors, but occasionally we'll hop on and have a video teaching from our lead pastor there as well.
Yeah, so it's a combination of everything that we see in all churches. That's crazy. Yeah, a lot to manage.
Yes.
So going back to, I think you have to be really careful, and I think this is for everybody to understand, when you're writing something or you're videoing something, something that's going to go out to not only your people but people in the community. That voice is really important to consider. You're writing this down, going, is this going to articulate well to our audience? And I imagine it gets a little bit challenging when you're thinking about, how do I write this for this particular campus and this audience versus that campus and that audience? And that's just part of the game you have to play week in and week out to make sure that you're communicating well.
Oh, 100%. And making sure that your content's not just getting lost just in the feed. I know I talked to some of our members at our Thomasville campus, and they straight up told me that they can tell, like, if something's just kind of copy and pasted from our Fairhope campus, like they'll just scroll right past it. They don't care anything about it. So it's just making sure that what we're posting applies to them as well.
Yeah, way to go on recognizing that and making sure that happens. Now, for our audience, so you stepped into this role. There was already somebody who's a part-time communication director, and you're a big church, which is kind of like, I'm scratching my head going, wow, a part-time comm director in a big church is usually there's a full-time person and a staff to go with that. But tell us a little bit about how you stepped into this role, and then you put your own, fingerprints on it.
Sure. Yeah. Whenever I came into the role, it was a part-time position originally. And yeah, we were outsourcing a lot of things, social media scheduling. We weren't putting out weekly emails, kind of keeping everything up to date with current events and everything. There were a lot of things that we just weren't able to do with the time that we had. So when I came into the role, I kind of took back some ownership of that and took back our social media scheduling, which again gave us the ability to kind of create that more like context per campus. And then I created the weekly emails that we send out every week, which we have branded the weekly.
Yeah.
So each one is specific to each campus. So that's just kind of how I took back some ownership of that.
Yeah, good for you. What's been one of the biggest challenges?
Oh my goodness. Cohesive branding
Oh, yeah.
between campuses. Yes. Everybody kind of has their hands in everything with their own designs, ministries kind of taking ownership of as well of what they're doing, which is great. I love that. But then also trying to keep my eyes on it and making sure that like logos are being used properly, that our dates and times are formatted the way that we want, that three circle language is being used. Yeah, it's a lot.
It is a lot. Have you had to have some challenging conversations with ministries?
Yeah, I try and catch those at the forefront if we're bringing on new staff, just trying to have those initial conversations, kind of walking them through. This is how we do things. This is how we talk. If we have anything like printed materials, anything written verbiage wise, this is how we say things. This is how we format, kind of thing. But we still run into challenges, so just have to send friendly reminders. But then also just we have a brand and style guide too that I can kind of slide in there and just say, if you need a refresher, just take a quick look. It has everything that you need to know in there.
Good for you. Yeah. So saying, hey, this is out of bounds. You can just kind of
Right.
move them down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I bet that's a challenge, I think, for everybody is and I was saying this, we were at a roadshow recently, one of our church communications roadshows, and we were talking about a house of brands versus a branded house. And it's always better to have a branded house instead of having
Mm-hmm.
all these things going on. And so there's a challenge, especially when you have multiple campuses and they're at a distance, like you said, up to 2 hours away for one campus. That
Mm-hmm.
can be kind of a challenge for you. And so you probably have to work pretty hard at maintaining and building relationships so there's trust there, as you want to
Right.
work and serve the ministries. Has that been your experience?
Yes, it has, but it has been good. I mean, our staff is we're very tight knit. We're like a family, so it's not super difficult. But yes, especially like bringing in new people, and just kind of building those relationships is super important to us.
Yeah.
Greta, can I ask a question, Jason?
Yeah.
Greta, who do you report to on the staff? Are you reporting to an executive pastor or a creative director? What's the team look like there?
Yes, I report to our executive pastor of worship, creative, and communications. So we work together a lot on projects.
Okay, so when you're working with your leadership team, and you've had a lot to do with building the communications team, what does the support that you're getting from your senior leadership team look like? How involved are they in what you're doing and how you're leading your team? What's your relationship look like in regards to those that are above you on the organizational chart?
Yeah, everyone is super supportive. I would say most of our staff, they understand the value of communication. So it's not something that I'm trying to sell to them to get on board with the ideas and things that I have that I would like to run with. They're very supportive in that way. But yeah, the executive pastor, his name's Zach. So we work together on lots of projects, any broader church initiatives. We both have our hands in it. We kind of just bounce ideas back and forth of each other, just things that we like to try, verbiage, just kind of getting him to sign off and those kinds of things that go out to our entire audience.
Yeah, I think that's what Bart was asking there, and this is This is so important, I think, just from the standpoint of any comm directors, is to have that buy-in with the leadership. You know,
Mm-hmm.
to try and
Yes.
build this on your own is not a good strategy because you're kind of out there by yourself on an island. And yet, if you have the buy-in from the leadership to say, yeah, this is our brand guide, and so
Yes.
it's coming from the top down, you're going to have a whole lot more, I think synergy and cohesiveness because you're able to say, well, this is what the leadership has said. This is where we're going as a direction, and you get to kind of drive that as the comm director. But
Mm-hmm.
it's nice to have that buy-in from your boss and boss's boss,
Yes.
the whole team, huh?
Yes. Yes. That support is huge, definitely.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the team that you've built. What was there when you got there? Was a part-time comms director. Was there any other support for the comms team? And then what have you sort of assembled in the time that you've been there?
Yeah, so I work closely with our creative director and our videographer, and those just creative teams that we have. We don't really have any support staff under communications. We do rely on our volunteers. Our volunteers are great.
Hmm.
They're always wanting to jump in and help us where it's needed. So, yeah, just kind of building those volunteer teams across campuses has been huge.
What does that look like? What kind of volunteer teams in terms of communications or creative? What kind of teams are you building, and what specific skill sets are you actually leaning into with volunteers?
Yeah, so well, we have our little serve cards that we have, and then our digital forms as well. And just having those initial conversations, those meetings with volunteers that say that they're interested in. We have broadcast hosting. Let's see, what else do we have? Photography, just anything that's on like the digital side. Just having those initial conversations, kind of seeing what their experience has been, what their background is, but also what they would like to do, how they would like to assist us. And those are the teams that we're trying to build right now, especially between campuses and building that context. That's been huge.
Do you guys have a lot of? Are you guys a heavy event driven church?
I would say so. Yes, we have a lot of events.
Okay. So do you spend so how do you balance your time between like Sundays, because it's the most important thing we do is sometimes it's just the
Right.
church, right? Because everybody kind of huddles together versus like broader church initiatives.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, it's a lot. I would say that on for Sundays, I spend like a little bit of time. I mean, still a good bit, but most of my time is spent on the broader church initiatives. For Sundays, I focus on just handouts and formatting teaching outlines, gathering like pre-roll content, slides, and things like that. Any printed materials that are needed on a Sunday, and then scheduling those chat hosts. But then that's kind of where I would say, responsibilities for Sunday kind of end. And then I pick up all of the event promotion side of everything. So the digital media, digital marketing, social media, emails, texts, all of that.
Yeah. Are you more task oriented, or are you more on the creative side?
Ooh, probably task oriented.
Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I like to dabble a little bit in the creative side of it, but with just time and time constraints, that's kind of hard. So I kind of watch my time and um, just give myself that freedom to be creative when I have the chance. But no, I have right now. I would say definitely more task oriented.
I
Okay,
think
that's
it's
interesting.
important. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's important for people to understand their giftedness and their strengths. And so for somebody like yourself, you're able to organize and get, I mean, the weekend's a pretty big deal. So you always have to make sure that is a pretty big priority, but it sounds like you're really task focused to make sure that's in line so you can have those moments of creativity for those other like church-wide initiatives or ministries or events that are going on, and allows you to still in your joy and your sweet spot of making sure you're tasking that out, but you can have some creative time, huh?
Exactly. Yes. And staying organized is like one of the biggest things with this job too. I mean, we have so much going on. It can be overwhelming at times, and you definitely don't want to lose things or forget things in the process. So I have like three different sets of to-do lists and but yeah, just staying organized so then I do have that time where I can be creative when I want to be.
I want
What,
to
what's
I want I want to press pause there for just a second. If
okay?
you're a pastor or executive pastor listening to this podcast, Jason and I have said this over and over again, and I'll go back to a quote from our friend Tyler Mount at Providence Church. Your communications director does not need to be a great graphic designer. They just need to know great graphic design when they see it. When you're in a 5 campus or 2 campus, multi-campus scenario, if you're trying to get creatives to manage all of the moving parts, you're probably going to be fighting an uphill battle. Your
Yes.
best bet for a communications director in a larger church with lots of moving parts is someone like Greta here, who has multiple to-do lists and checks off her to-do lists and is more of a project coordinator, project manager type of person rather than necessarily being the creative who's generating all the creative ideas. Anyway, I just thought that was worth
Well,
pausing
but
on
she
because that's really
knows.
important.
Yeah,
But she knows creative when she sees it. Yeah, you got it.
you got to be able to manage the brand. It sounds
Yeah.
like that's
Yes.
that's kind of what you're doing and doing a good job of it. Wow.
Yes, yeah. That's where I would say I spend most of my time is going through and looking at what other people have created and just kind of um, lending my advice or just kind of critiquing in that capacity instead of me being the primarily like the one that's designing these. I can't imagine also having to add that to my plate.
Oh yeah. What is your church man or the your project management system that you use?
We use live design. Is
Oh,
that what you're
no,
asking?
that so like Asana, or do you have like a base camp, or do you do something where you're organizing all these projects, or do you keep them written
Yes.
down
So
somewhere?
yes, so through Live Design, the company that we work with, we do use Basecamp, and we'll just go back and forth on projects that way. That would be our main project
There you
management
go.
system.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because you can kind of huddle around that to make sure you stay organized with all the things that you have going on. Yeah.
Well, you brought
Oh
up
yes.
using live design, outsourcing some of your services there. Give us a picture of what you're outsourcing versus what you're doing internally in terms of creative and production, copywriting, graphic design, video production. Like what's the balance there? That's a question a lot of churches ask us a lot is, how much of this should we be doing in-house? Do I need to hire a graphic designer or should I outsource this? What's the balance for you guys?
Yeah, so we do outsource a lot of graphic design, especially with live design. So any events that we have going on that need branding, any printed materials for the most part, unless it's a last minute idea or rush project, we do have our creative director who will assist us in turning things around in house. But for the most part, we do give a lot of our graphics, our branding to Live Design to help us with. For video production, we have an in house videographer who handles the majority of that. Um, but let's see, what
How
else
about
did
how
you
about
ask?
copywriting? Are you doing the bulk of the copywriting? Do you have somebody else that writes with you for you? What does that look like?
Uh, so my boss Zach and I, we both we handle the majority of the copywriting. Yeah, it's just us.
Okay. All right. Well, Live Design is not sponsoring this episode, but if there is anyone from Live
No.
Design who would like to sponsor future episodes of the Mission Marketing
Just let us
Podcast,
know.
you can give me a call. Let us know. Thanks.
Uh,
Thanks for the plug there. Yeah.
Yeah.
well, and so I also see that you're like using Mailchimp to send out your emails and things of that nature, and so I'm guessing that really does energize you, because you got like you look forward to the week ahead because you've got these tasks you get to see accomplished, and it's playing into the bigger picture and the vision of the church. And I don't think we did this, but explain what three circle. What is that? What's
What
that
does it
mean?
mean? What does that
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. So three circle, our name comes from Acts 1:8. You will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and all of Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. So that is our three circles, our local, regional, and global circles. So we exist to make disciples locally, regionally, and globally. And then our vision is by reaching in worship, reaching up in worship, reaching in to grow, and then reaching out to serve.
I like that. Kind of reminds me of my 3 rings of audience that we
There you
focus.
go.
Yeah.
We talk about 3 rings, not 3 circles all the time, but they're slightly different rings. Anyway, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that. Greta, what are you looking to? Who are you looking to learn to get better in what you're doing? I mean, reality is you went to college, you've got a degree, you're in the trenches of ministry now, trying to both apply what you learned, but obviously things are moving at a very, very fast pace, just in terms of your church growth and certainly communication. So what are you doing to just sharpen the saw to get better? Who are you listening to? What are you reading? Share some of those resources with us.
Sure. Yeah. So still being relatively new to the field, I'm still gathering a lot of recommendations for just how to better myself as a communications director. But this past November, I attended the SALT conference, and that was very helpful and inspiring, even not just from a creative perspective, but from a communications perspective as well. We focused a lot on AI and how that can help us as church communications leaders. And then I'm also part of the church communications Facebook group, which y'all told me a little bit about earlier.
Yeah.
But so that's been super cool just to work alongside of other church comms leaders, just kind of seeing what they're doing as well, just kind of getting ideas for our own ministries. But that's something that I really like about this field, being like within a church and like working with like-minded churches. We are all on the same team. We are all ultimately working towards the same goal of reaching people for Jesus. So that's something you don't really see in, I guess, corporate world versus church world.
Not at all. Not at all. Great answers. I love that you're tapping into the right markets there, especially the church communications group. So little plug there for y'all.
Right.
Talk a little bit about how, because you like the rest of us, I think you're on this learning curve of using AI. How you doing that?
Yeah, so it's a lot of just trial and error, I would say. That the talk that I sat in on back at the SALT conference, we talked about just how kind of effectively to use AI, and just where it is right now and then where it's going. But the most, I think, important thing that I took away from it was how to speak to AI, which was a completely like foreign concept to me. I was just typing in it like, this is what I want, please give it to me. And Kenny Jang was actually telling us how it's helpful to ask like questions and like asking them, just talking to them like they would be a ministry resident or intern, speaking to it kindly, but then asking questions, clarifying questions, so that it can most effectively create what we're asking it to.
Oh, well said. And just another little added on to, bonus onto that is we were just at a executive pastor conference, and Bart had a breakout session on utilizing AI and Google, but he's speaking into the AI portion of it, where I think we're a little maybe a little afraid or just not quite sure because we just don't know. But the good news is that this is just and we got another guy on our team, David, who says this is the wild, wild west. It's like it's just constantly changing. The landscape is changing. How we're using it is changing. And how we're learning to use it is got to continue to evolve and change. But if used well and properly, it can really help you do a lot of things more efficient, more effective.
Yes.
It's not supposed to replace you. It's supposed to enhance you. And that's a really important message, because I think there's some miscommunication about, well, we're just a bunch of robots running around doing ministry. No,
Right.
I don't think that's the intention. It's still human to human, for sure. But we can utilize that stuff to get just more out of it. And I really love what Bart had a great breakout where he was just talking about the efficiencies, and you can use this tool or you can use that tool and it can do this for you. And I think it sounds like you're on that learning curve right now.
Yes. How to use it and how to use it effectively, efficiently, making my job more efficiently, making it easier to manage my time. So I'm not sitting in front of my computer just racking my brain. How do I write a social media caption? My brain can't work anymore for the day. It's used up all the creative juices. So just effectively using that for it to be like my little assistant, kind of viewing it that way, rather than trying to replace me.
Oh, that is really well said.
What specific tools can you share with us? 2 or 3 tools that you have been experimenting with, and what degree of effectiveness are you finding with those tools?
Yeah, I've used Copy AI and then Chat GPT. So just they're both very similar, but just I kind of use them at both at the same time and just kind of comparing what I'm getting from each one. So like the generative AI side of it, just mainly being text based. But that's how I'm using it.
Okay.
I'll throw one out there that you might want to try, and this is for the audience, is also Claude.
Oh, how do you spell that?
Claude. So
Okay.
CLAUDE.ai. That one
Mhm.
actually picks up your voice pretty well and does a really good
Oh,
job. If you take like a YouTube transcript of a sermon and you say, write a 1,500 word blog summary about this sermon, and you have some prompts in there, it is really, really good. So
oh
check out
wow.
Claude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
love
Claude,
I'll
if
have
you
Claude.
to
guys
write that
want
one
to
down.
sponsor this,
Yeah.
you sure can if you guys hear it.
I love Claude. I love Claude so much that I actually last week finally bit the bullet and went with a subscribed version. Which, for those of you who have used ChatGPT 3, there's some limitations there. If you go to the subscription version of ChatGPT 4, there's just a wealth of new stuff and different stuff that you can do in ChatGPT 4. Claude is not quite the same way. It's basically just gives you more queries that you can use. You're limited to how many times you can use it a day. But at 6:45 this morning, I took an audio recording of a conference session that a friend of mine did 5 years ago, and uploaded it. Took the transcript of that audio recording, threw it into Claude, asked it to write a 1,500 word blog post at the reading level of a 10th grader. This is one thing I always tell Claude what reading level I want the copy to be written at. Otherwise, it's always seems to be really high level. But if I get really granular that way, I get really good copy. And I took that and then massaged it to make sure that some of my friends' language was in it. And in less than 15 minutes, I had a 1,500 word blog post that he could use on his website. And it was, really quick, really easy. Did it before I even had my third cup of coffee this morning. That's probably saying
Oh
Wow.
a lot.
wow.
I was up pretty early. 6:45. I was up about 5:45. I did it at 6:45. Anyway, love Claude. We should probably wrap this up. Jason, you wanna lead our plane landing here?
Sure. No, I think Greta, it's really cool to see young talent that's quickly getting it. And we're kind of old school, been around for a long, long time, and it's neat to see somebody that's picking up the torch, carrying it further, utilizing some of these great tools, and you're quickly getting the importance and the essence of running an effective communications department, and you're tied into a really healthy, growing church. So a lot of great out of it. I'll just, if anybody wants to connect with you, how can they, find you?
Sure. Yeah. If anyone would like to connect with me, you can always reach out to me via email, greta@threecirclechurch.com. I'm also on social media at Greta Page. No I in Page.
There we go.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for taking some time just to speak into your world and what you've got going on. And it's a blessing. So thank you for hanging out with us.
Yeah. Thank y'all.
We do thank you, Greta. And for those of you who've been listening or watching this podcast episode, we want to thank you too. If you haven't yet subscribed, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, make sure that you do that. If you happen to be listening to this on Google Podcasts, Google Podcasts is going away. So you better find another platform to listen to this podcast on, like Stitcher or Spotify, or, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of those out there. But if you're listening on Google Podcasts, you will not be getting our episodes for too much longer. Anyway, thanks again for tuning into the Missional Marketing Podcast, and we'll see you next week.